Hello everyone, I'm Betty Nguyen. Welcome to the CBS News Miami special, Nothing But Her Truth, my exclusive one-on-one interview with former Circuit Judge Elizabeth Scherer. She presided over the Parkland school shooting trial and was the center of fascination and controversy. She resigned in 2023 following the backlash over how this trial was handled. Well, now she's talking about the case for the first time. Here's my exclusive multi-part interview with Scherer as she goes in depth on what happened in the courtroom during this historic trial. Former Judge Elizabeth Scherer is surrounded by family in this law firm her father founded nearly 50 years ago. This is where she now practices civil law, a stark contrast from being thrust into the national spotlight as the presiding judge in the Parkland school shooting trial. The massacre happened on Valentine's Day 2018, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others. It remains one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
11 firearm magazines.
The very next day, Judge Scherer was randomly assigned to the Parkland school shooter's death penalty trial. When you got notice that you were the judge, what did you think?
I was going through my docket and my secretary came in and she was like in a full panic. I need to talk to you, I need to talk to you. And I said, what's the matter? She said, you got to sign the Parkland case. And I said, okay. It was a big shock, but not so much. I don't know. I can't explain it. I had a feeling that case was coming to me.
The case lasted 5 years, and with it came cameras that captured courtroom drama in real time before a live nationwide audience.
We have another day wasted. I honestly have never experienced a level of unprofessionalism in my career.
Some of the courtroom sparring, though, do you feel like it took away from the trial?
Well, anytime I had to, reprimand or censor an attorney, it was outside the presence of the jury.
But jurors did see some of this heated exchange.
Your Honor?
Yes?
At this time, the defense rests, other than putting in our records.
We're not playing chess. I mean, will you please take the jury back in?
Viewers watched the rest play out between the judge and public defender Melissa McNeil.
I have been practicing in this county for 22 years.
You know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear
Well, Judge, you're insulting me on the record in front of my client, and I believe that I should be able to defend
Okay, you
myself.
can do that later. You can make your record later, but you've been insulting me the entire trial. So, blatantly, taking your headphones off, arguing with me, storming out, coming late intentionally if you don't like my rulings. So, quite frankly, this has been long overdue.
There was a lot of talk surrounding some of the actions when it came to public defender Melissa McNeil. Do you feel that you unduly chastised the public defender?
You know, can I just have a minute?
Yeah, take your time.
I just need like a minute to take a drink and to think about this.
Yeah. Scherer took a brief break, and when she came back... So let's get to some of the moments in the trial that stick out in a lot of folks' head.
Okay.
Do you feel at any point that you unduly chastised the public defender, Melissa McNeil?
So there was a lot that was going on during that trial that I felt was extremely unprofessional and disrespectful, not only to the court, but to the families. As a judge, there's only certain tools that you have to address that type of disrespect. And, did I handle it perfectly? Perhaps not, but I did what I thought needed to be done in order to maintain decorum and to keep that trial moving in a way that was fair to all parties.
Scherer says her initial hesitation to discuss certain details stems from her agreement to receive a public reprimand from the Florida Supreme Court and an acknowledgement that her conduct during trial was at times not patient, dignified, or courteous. But critics argue some of the actions by the defense team were shocking.
When these people are upset about specific things that have gone on from that table, like shooting the middle finger up, at this court and laughing and joking. Miss McNeil, be quiet.
And then there was this polarizing moment.
Judge, I can assure you that if they were talking about your children, you would definitely notice it.
You need to sit down right now. You're out of line. In fact, you're excused. To try to threaten my children and bring up my children is inappropriate.
Looking back on that, do you still feel that your child was threatened?
So I'm very protective of my daughter, and looking back, I may have overreacted. In other words, maybe that's not what the attorney meant, but I don't feel it's ever appropriate to look at a judge and say, well, if this was your kid, that is just so far out of line that I will tell you he found the right button to push. I try to maintain a level of calmness and take a deep breath when somebody's trying to sort of bait me. Bringing up my daughter, I did lose my temper, and just to put it in context, although I don't know that that's what was meant by it, but as a career criminal prosecutor, I've had 3 or 4 defendants get out of prison and come to my courtroom. They find out I'm a judge, they come to my courtroom, they sit in the back. And I think my mind was going too fast when I heard that, and I thought, well, now everybody who's watching knows I have a daughter, so anybody who wants to sort of get to me can bring her up. But long story short, do I think that's what he meant? Probably not. Do I think that he was inappropriate? Absolutely. All right, he's remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections.
The Parkland school shooting case lasted over 5 years. In the end, a jury did not come to a unanimous decision on the death penalty, sentencing the shooter to life in prison, a verdict that crushed the victims' families.
We, the jury, unanimously find...
The trial was over, but the courtroom cameras were still rolling. When presiding Judge Elizabeth Scherer hugged the victims' families and even members of the prosecution, backlash came quickly. Do you feel like you showed a bias?
When I stepped down and hugged the victims? So the prosecutor came up to me and said, Judge, the victims' families would like to meet you. And the defendant had already been sentenced and the trial was over. There's no appeal because he was sentenced to life in prison based upon the recommendation of the jury. There's no appeal. So I said, sure, they can come up. And they came up and started to, including the prosecution, started to shake my hand over the bench. And I was having a hard time leaning over. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna come down. And I came down, and at that moment, it felt like we have all been through so much. And as a human being, I'm gonna give a hug. I don't feel, shaking hands is awkward, and I wanna hug these people. And they hugged me and I hugged them, and I think it offered a sense of closure and peace, not only to me, but to those families. And I understand that people think a judge shouldn't do that, but I don't think that any other judge in the world has ever sat through a trial where children were shredded with bullets.
At any moment during those hugs, did it dawn on you that, wow, this may be perceived as a bias?
I knew I was on camera. It wasn't like I tried to hide it. I knew that this was going to be on national television. But I thought at the time that because I offered the same to the defense, that it would be okay. And in hindsight, perhaps I should have just hugged the families and shaken the hands of the prosecution. But again, it was an emotional time, and I was probably thinking with my heart and not my head.
When did it hit you that this could be problematic for me?
When right after the trial, there were hundreds of motions to disqualify filed against me by the public defender's office for those actions.
The Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission determined the judge violated several rules governing judicial conduct. It also said, You allowed your emotions to overcome your judgment. Is that true?
At times.
Is that part of just being human?
I think it is.
Is that what makes you different as a judge?
I think that maybe because they're saying my emotions got the better of me, to the extent that I hug the families, maybe that part makes me different.
Do you regret it?
No.
Why?
Because it offered a sense of peace and closure to those grieving families. I regret that people perceived it in a way that they led them to believe that I couldn't be fair and impartial on other cases. That part I regret. But do I regret embracing those people as a human being, one human being to another, one parent to another? No.
Judge Scherer resigned in June 2023 before the Florida Supreme Court issued a public reprimand. So do you think you could have continued on as a judge and been fair and impartial?
Absolutely.
Do you think you've been given a raw deal?
No. I think that it was my job to maintain, decorum and impartiality, and if somebody disagrees with me, I think it's always best to reflect and move on and do better next time.
Why leave?
Well, I was there for 10 years. So 20 years in a courtroom, a criminal courtroom, but for the few years I was in family court, it was time for a change. Time to do something else.
Former Judge Elizabeth Scherer now works at the Fort Lauderdale firm her father founded nearly 5 decades ago.
Hi, how are you?
He's a powerhouse attorney who represented former President George W. Bush in the Broward County recount.
I wanted my kids to all be lawyers, and they are. So my dream has come true. Took 50 years of practice for me to get all my kids in my firm, and here they are.
But initially, this family was ready to fiercely defend the daughter and sister they affectionately call Liz from the fallout surrounding the Parkland school shooting trial.
I wanted her to fight it vigorously.
Last June, the Judicial Qualifications Commission determined Judge Scherer at times gave the appearance of partiality.
My dad also wanted me to contest it. But, as you can imagine, a trial would have required witnesses. And who would the witnesses have been? These family members who were there to experience and witness a lot of what went on. And to me, it was not an option.
The former judge says she didn't want the victims and family members to relive that trial all over again. So she resigned and is now practicing civil law. Does it feel like you're starting over?
Yes, absolutely. Especially when they tell me, you're assigned to this case now, and I go, okay, what am I, first chair? No, sixth. And I'm saying, what? I'm used to calling the shots, making the rulings.
While a jury decided the fate of the Parkland school shooter, this former judge reviewed all the evidence in the case and even toured the classroom where so many young lives were cut short. Did this change you in any way?
I would say of all the evidence, the hardest part was hearing a cell phone video that a child had taken where you could hear the gunfire and the screaming in the background. That was gut-wrenching.
Do you think that the shooter should have gotten the death penalty?
I believe legally he qualified for the death penalty. I believe legally the state met its burden of proof as proving heinous, atrocious, and cruel.
There are a lot of victims' families that watched your actions day after day in the courtroom, and they were in support of you. What is your reaction to that?
Humbled. When I heard from them originally after the trial and got to embrace them and actually touch them for the first time, and hear them describe how grateful they were for what I did. To know that with what they went through, that I in some way helped give them some type of peace, made the whole thing worthwhile.
How did you decompress during the Parkland trial? What did you do to try to take the stress out of your life?
So I love horses, and I moved my horses to Lexington, Kentucky, which to me is it's just heaven. I would take a commuter flight on the weekends and ride my horses in Lexington. They're so tranquil, and so that was my getaway.
So this is your happy place?
Yes, this is my happy place. This is my oldest horse. Her name is Zellaline.
Here at the Next Level Performance Center in Davie, she's continued to ride and compete, winning first place awards and even breaking a few bones.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Are you kidding me? The higher those jumps go, the more adrenaline and the more fun it is.
Don't you get scared?
Yeah, but you have to sort of get over that part. You have to, the fear is part of it. I think anything you do in life is a little scary.
In her career, she's also had to dust herself off and keep going. Right now, she's thinking about writing a book and says she's gotten offers to provide legal commentary. Should Judge Judy be a little worried here?
I don't think Judge Judy has to be worried about anyone ever.
There are a lot of victims' families that watched your actions day after day in the courtroom, and they were in support of you. What is your reaction to that?
Humbled. When I heard from them originally after the trial and got to embrace them and actually touch them for the first time and hear them describe how grateful they were for what I did. And I mean, if you think about it, what did I do? These people sat in that trial every day and listened to horrific testimony, watched what I view as very unprofessional behavior coming from one side of the courtroom, and they maintained a level of, it's hard to describe. It was like grace and patience, and they were beautiful people who were able to put the needs of their children. In other words, my children need me to sit. I'm doing this for my child. I'm going to sit in here, as painful as it might be, and I'm going to listen to this testimony because I want to be there for my child. So to know that with what they went through, that I in some way helped give them some type of peace, made the whole thing worthwhile.
Is that what they said? What did they tell you?
Judge Scherer, thank you so much. You were so kind and so professional, and they wrote letters afterwards.
Sounds like it's a lifelong bond.
You know what? I feel they're my guardian angels.
Take me back to the trial, because I know you got to see some of the things that we as viewers were shielded from, and you actually got to go into the building.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So, the most striking thing that I remember is it was like time stood still. There were old newspapers and magazines from February 14th, 2018. They had things written on the boards, and seeing some of the kids' belongings on the floor, and knowing who was where and what happened. It really resonates, the impact and the gravity and the tremendous loss just resonates when you go through that experience and walk through that building.
And to see the pictures.
The pictures were so those bullets in that in the high-powered assault rifle that was used, they are meant to tumble, and so they tumble in your body, and it's like a shredder that goes through. I mean, some of these kids had nothing left of them. They just, and looking at those pictures wasn't the hardest part. It was looking at them and thinking that the parents may choose one day to look at these photos, because when the trial is over, I believe the prosecution gives them the opportunity to look at the evidence, and that is just, that's hard.
What do you want to see happen to the building where this massacre occurred?
Well, you know, I know there's a lot of back and forth on that, but interestingly enough, I really didn't have an opinion one way or the other, because I always felt that that should be the family's decision, law enforcement's decision. If they feel they need it, then they need it. So interestingly enough, the family recently told me that they want it kept up, the families, because what they're doing is they're taking politicians, senators, representatives from Congress and from the Florida legislature, and they are having those individuals actually walk through the building, because they believe that it's much more impactful, has much a stronger impact to have these people who are making decisions, passing laws, to actually walk through it, walk in my shoes, walk in my child's shoes.
Thank you for joining us. You can watch all of my interview with retired Circuit Judge Elizabeth Scherer on CBSMiami.com. I'm Betty Nguyen, CBS News, Miami.